Good afternoon. I'd like to call the study session meeting of April 10th, 2024 to order. City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Lamb?
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez?
Here.
Councilmember Gregory? Mayor Pro Tem Ross? Here. Mayor Carnevale?
Here. City Manager, are there any changes to the agenda?
I have no changes, Mayor.
Thank you. City Clerk, would you please read the statement of participation?
Public comment is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are within the City Council's jurisdiction but not on the agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. The Mayor may also request a brief response from staff to questions raised during public comment or request that a matter be agendized for a future meeting. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. If you're a member of the public and you wish to address the City Council, please complete a request to speak form available at the entrance and submit it to the City Clerk. You will be called upon at the appropriate time. If you have materials or other items to present to the members of the City Council, please do not approach them. All materials shall be presented to the City Clerk for distribution.
Thank you. The first item on study session, visit Greater Palm Springs update on 2024 goals and objectives and introduction of the proposed revised Joint Powers Authority Agreement. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Mayor Carnevale, I apologize. I do want to ask for public comments. I did not receive any requests to speak forms, but just in case. If you're a member of the public and you wish to comment on any item not on the agenda, please raise your hand. And I see none, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We are pleased to have with us Scott White from Visit Greater Palm Springs. And he comes about, I don't know, once a year or every other year, something like that, to give you an update on what's going on, which is always very interesting. And this year also, he's going to be going over the proposed changes to the Joint Powers Agreement that then is on your agenda for tonight to adopt. Scott?
Officer, and Davis Meyer, our Vice President of Government and Industry Relations. We're going to give you an update on our activities and the priorities that have been set by the Board of Directors and the JPA Executive Committee. Just as a little bit of a reminder, we do an economic impact study that analyzes the data from a tourism industry throughout the entire valley. This is a comparison of 2019 to 2022. We're hoping to have the 2023 data here in the next maybe month or so. But you can see definitely there was increases from 2019 coming out of the pandemic, both in state and local taxes. The amount of taxes saved by households is still $5,000. So what that means is if tourism was to go away or not be at the level it is today, then you would have to raise taxes in order to maintain the same level of services. So tourism really offsets a lot of those revenues that our cities are dependent upon. I think jobs will come back to the post-2019 numbers that we see here, and then economic impact increased quite a bit in 2022. This shows an overview of our funding source. This is our budget for the 23-24 fiscal year. The majority of our funds now come from a tourism business improvement district, 3% on hotels, which raised about $22 million this fiscal year, we're estimating. Vacation rentals, we get about $2.5 million from JPA funding. You can see that for Cathedral City, it represents about 2% of our overall JPA funding and 0.2% of our overall funding, with all private and other revenues included as well. 86% of our funds go back out for sales and marketing efforts, and then 14% is for admin and operations.
Excuse me, Scott, if I could
Yes.
interrupt you.
Yes.
Sometimes this council likes to ask questions. Do you prefer as you go? Or
we're very casual, so whatever if you want to ask the question at the time, I'm fine with just stopping me and ask a question. That's fine.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
So I'm so glad you touched on funding. Thank you so much for being here. So because it's always been kind of a mystery. We know that so is it part of the TOT? How is that charged on the hotel bill, or is it charged directly to the hotel?
So the way the Tourism Business Improvement District works is it's an assessment to the business that's being levied. They have the option then to pass it on to the guest, which has to be disclosed just like TOT. So when somebody goes to check out of the hotel has the option to disclose that or lump it or disclose it separately, but it has to be disclosed, and it
So
does
it may
come
show
up.
as part of the TOT, may show TOT and then
They should say tourism assessment.
Oh, okay.
Some people use different language based on the brand.
And when I was looking through the agreement, it talked about convention hotels, and then it talked about vacation rentals. So are they only charged on those two, or what's?
So for the JPA funding, that's a little different. That's a percentage of, for convention hotels is 0.035. For non-convention lodging, which would be vacation rentals or hotels without meeting space, is the 0.015%. So it's based on gross revenues, not the TOT. And so the finance director will then determine what would the estimated gross revenues be based on the TOT received, and then the percentage is levied against that. That's how the JPA funding is done, because everybody's TOT is different throughout the valley. So they use gross revenues as the baseline.
So are you explaining the T-bid part of it, or the other little?
The T-bid part and the JPA are completely separate. So the T-bid is the 3% on hotels with 50 rooms or more, or 1% on vacation rentals. The
Okay,
JPA,
so that's where the line is.
That's correct.
Or 50 rooms or more.
50 rooms or more.
All right. And then because I was talking about that part and how it would show up on the bill, and then you skipped over to the other part. So now I'm even more confused. So that part is paid for by either the visitors or the hotels, right?
Yeah, they all pass it on to the guests, so they're all paid for by the visitor.
And so then the other part, the smaller piece of the pie, you're saying that comes from the city.
The JPA funding, correct.
All right, and then how does it determine how much the city pays?
The determination is based on gross revenues. So the finance director determines what the gross revenues would have been from any business that levies TOT. So it could be a hotel, vacation rental, Airbnb, whatever it may be. And then they have the two formulas. The one formula is for any lodging that has convention facilities, meeting rooms and so forth that's doing group business. It's a little bit of a higher percentage, the 0.035. And then if it's non-convention lodging, it's 0.015%.
Okay.
And so your contribution for Cathedral City is, where did it go on here?
I think it's
$50,625 is estimated for 2023-24. So then that's paid quarterly, and at the end of the year, the finance director would determine, hey, revenues were down, so we may owe money back, or pay less for the last quarter, or revenues may be up, and then there's an additional.
Right. We'd like that to be more, but we just need more hotel rooms.
Yes.
So anything you can do, I know you're doing.
And that's a budgeted line item in our budget.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And is that changing with the proposed update, or is that the same funding?
It's not, yeah, there's no change that would impact you. The only thing that's changed on the JPA agreement is that any new member municipality that wants to be added, there's a entry and operating fee that was established in 1989 that's now been integrated into the JPA, and now there's a minimum. So let's say if a city fell below 35,000, the minimum would be 35,000.
All right. But even a city like ours, we're well above the minimum.
Correct.
So, okay. All right. I'm the one. I'm one of the ones that worries about the money. So, but thank you because I've heard from people how it was funded, but I've never really seen that spelled out like that.
Okay.
So thank you.
So about taxing, and you said that the hotels, and correct me if I'm wrong because I might be on this. So you said that the hotels have to disclose what they're charging the customer.
At checkout, correct. When it went on their folio, it would say on their the Tourism Business Improvement District or assessment, whatever they use different.
So is that mandated, or can they absorb that amount of money and not put it as a tax? Can they just say, we normally, other places charge $28, we charge $30, we don't have to list that we're giving, that you're paying tax, even though ostensibly they still would?
They would have to disclose the assessment on the folio. And if they didn't want to pass it on to the guests, they could pay that themselves. But I don't know of any business that's going to do that. Yeah.
I just wondered if that got them out of that by some sleuthy way, that if they didn't pass it on a tally sheet of the summary of staying there, then they could maybe not pass it on.
No, I mean, they're bound by the Tourism Business Improvement District to pay the assessment on their gross revenues, rental revenues, which is their room revenues.
All right.
So.
All right.
So they can't skip out of it. If
All right, that's good.
Okay.
That's great, thank you.
This is a slide that overviews the priority areas of focus. We sit down with our board every year to 2 years and go over and make sure that we're all aligned on the key components of what we're doing as an organization. Clearly, leisure marketing is in the foremost in improving domestic and international visitation to the Valley, attract new meetings, convention, and events. We're always working on trying to develop demand for need periods, especially around leisure and group. We do a lot of research. You'll learn from Colleen that a lot of the things that we do are measured around sentiment that we get back from the consumer, from travel trade, PR, and so forth. Vacation rentals, Davis is going to talk a little bit about how we're educating the community and homeowners and developing best practices. Regionally, we work on air service development with the airport in tandem with them, and the reason why we do that is the airport is severely limited by the FAA and what they can and cannot do, and we're not. So we have more freedom to enter in agreements with the airlines that may want a minimum revenue guarantee, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute as well. About 2 years ago, we added Lauren Brueggemans to our office. He's our Director of Sustainability and Community Engagement, working on our diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, sustainability, accessibility, and cultural heritage. Davis and the team is working on workforce development and our ambassador program. And then as part of the JPA update, we are now going to embark on diversifying our regional economy, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well. And then we recently engaged capital advocacy that's going to help us make sure we're aware of any legislation that's happening in Sacramento that could be a detriment or impactful, or look for opportunities in Sacramento that may help us in our new endeavor. So talking about the JPA agreement, which you'll have on your consent calendar for later today, really the two key changes are the fact that we're adding the city of Coachella to the boundaries, and the reason why that's being done is they now have vacation rentals, so they can pay into the JPA, plus with our new requirement of doing economic diversity, we know that they would benefit from that, so it's important that they participate. And then we came back and changed that to add the entry fee. So if the city of Coachella approves this, they would pay about $35,000 to become part of the JPA, and then their minimum would be $35,000 because their vacation rentals right now really only add up to about $8,000 or $9,000 or $10,000 a year in what their JPA fees would be. So the JPA executive committee felt like that wasn't enough, and so they raised the minimum to $35,000. So those are the three main areas that the JPA agreement is addressing.
I had just about when you talked about the airport, Palm Springs Airport, does that include your influence, the Jackie Cochran Airport, or?
No, we just work on commercial.
Okay.
Yeah, not private.
Okay.
Yeah, Jackie Cochran's all private.
All
yeah.
private, okay. Thank you for clarifying.
And as the JPA will then appoint a committee to oversee the economic development recruitment process that we're working on. We've just finalized or are finalizing with a communication strategy and website with a company called North Star. We've promoted Davis, and we hired Sean Smith as our Director of Economic Development. And then we're going to be working with the county on a strategic plan. They're doing an overall strategic plan for the county, and then we're going to dive a little bit deeper for the Coachella Valley to make sure that we have an economic development plan specifically for our valley as well. Air service. So our goal is really to grow year-round air service into the destination. Southwest was a major, I think, accomplishment for us in the region because they are year-round. They're not seasonal at all, which is very, very nice. It's changed a lot for us, especially in the summertime as well. For those that aren't year-round, we try to extend the seasons. They extend into June, and maybe start a little bit earlier in September. So there's another priority for us. And then we pursue new nonstop markets like New York, Washington, D.C., East Coast. We know when people travel further, they stay longer, and they spend more money. So we did get a second flight to New York on Alaska Airlines, and we've been trying for years to get Washington, D.C. Hopefully we'll get Washington, D.C. as a nonstop. That's our goal right now. Sacramento was always Vegas and Sacramento were the two big ones that we got from everybody, so Southwest helped us with that. Now I'm hearing Hawaii. People want Hawaii, so we'll see if that happens as well. But for us, from a group standpoint, D.C. is a major priority. And then as the city of Palm Springs is working at the airport on expansion, we're going out to the airlines to get letters of support because we do want an international facility there. Even though it says Palm Springs International Airport, it's only an international airport for those cities that have pre-clearance, like we see in Canada. So for a destination that doesn't have pre-clearance, we would have to have FIS facilities at the airport. So we're advocating for that with the city and the airport, and then we're going out to the airlines as well to say, if we build it, will you come? And so far it's been really good response, especially for Mexico and additional markets in Canada. So air service stats, you can see over the last 10 years, the number of passengers coming into the airport has pretty much doubled. The number of seats have doubled, load factor is up, and seat capacity is up over 2022 as well. So the airport is bustling at the seams as anybody's traveled recently. There's a lot going on there, so we certainly need a bigger airport. Convention sales, we have a sales team that is actively soliciting and looking for new business to come into the valley to fill our hotels. This is an overview of what happened last year for Cathedral City. We sent 262 leads to your hotels, which resulted in 19 bookings, a little over 6,300 room nights. Those groups represent about 19,000 jobs, and we estimate, based on using STAR data, that that would have generated about $120,000 in TOT.
May I
So-
ask you a question just based on this? And try not to hurt my feelings. Why is it we have 262 leads and we can only book 19 rooms?
So, and that's nothing against
trying not
Cathedral City. That's kind of the trend across. We'll have thousands of leads that come through where people are kind of kicking the tires and they want to see what our rates are and so forth. We have a lot of
That's not
groups.
an unusual number or
No.
ratio?
No.
All right, I feel better already.
So is that rooms or is that groups?
That's groups. Your
That's-
rooms is 6,316 room nights total.
Okay.
So,
Now, prior to the pandemic, we were pretty busy with conventions. Have we caught up and have we actually recruited those groups back to the desert?
yes. Yeah, the group business has been really has been quick to come back. Leisure is obviously the quickest to come back. Group has definitely come back. We see it strong pace. 2023 was a record year for us. This year has started off really strong. So group business is certainly a strong foundation for the destination. And I think being in a resort environment, it's definitely very appealing for that type of business.
Thank you.
The other area that we've added into our goals and objective is how do we fill the need periods? And we look at need periods based on how hotels are performing. And so what we hear is early January, the first 2 weeks of January can be a little soft. So we're trying to find groups that fit that kind of data set. Midweek during Coachella, as we know, sometimes midweek between the two festivals, it gets pretty quiet around here, especially for groups. People are afraid to book, so we're trying to find business that could fit in the gaps. Summer, obviously, is a key priority for us as well, and then certain dates in the fall. And we're starting to track that, so you can see here's for the results for Cathedral City. 2024, just out the gate, we're at 1,439 room nights, so a really good start to the year. We're exceeding 2022 and certainly over 2023. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Colleen Pace. She's a much better presenter than I am, and she's going to give you an update on all of our marketing efforts.
For sure, she's prettier.
Now he set me up to fumble. Good afternoon. I'm going to give a brief update on destination marketing, one of our high priorities for the organization and for the destination. So destination marketing encompasses advertising, brand development, website, social media, content creation, and public relations and communications. We do that all through highlighting our universal, diverse experiences, including health and wellness, outdoor experiences, arts and culture, dining and shopping, cultural heritage, and LGBTQ. So some highlights from last year, we had over 25 billion total impressions. You can see here 146 million were in digital advertising impressions, 1.9 million in television spots across all of our drive and fly markets that Scott was mentioning, 9 million social media views across all of our social media channels, and 3.3 million website visitors to our website. And from that, we were able to refer 628, almost 629,000 partner referrals to our local businesses to promote local businesses in our destination. We also launched our first ever direct-to-consumer international campaign in the UK and Ireland. We had a very successful launch in April, and we garnered almost 49 million impressions and 276,000 clicks on our ads, which is phenomenally impressive considering it was our first effort to do that. And you can see here all of the different channels that we have and some of the ads examples that we're running. And we're currently running that this year as well. This is a highlight of all of our trade and PR representation across the globe, including domestic, but also the UK, France, Germany, Australia, China, India, South Korea, Japan, and Scandinavia. So we have some of them on retainer, some of them on special projects. So again, we have global presence really promoting our destination. We also run a subsidized co-op program, and last year in 2023, we had 19 total co-op partners, which included digital, billboard, and TV, which garnered 16 million digital advertising impressions, 116 television spots, and 7.2 billion total impressions. When you get in the billions, it gets to be a pretty big number for the destination, so we're really excited about that. And we work with Agua Caliente casinos to promote the 3 casino locations, and this is the summer co-op spot that we ran in 2023, and it highlights the casino here in Cathedral City. And we just finalized our production for 2024, and we produced a new spot for the same Agua Caliente Casino, so we're excited to share that in the coming weeks for our summer campaign. Speaking of our summer campaign, we launched Check In, Chill Out May through August, again to promote summer visitation. As Scott was mentioning, we used to just do that in our drive market, but now we have direct fly markets year round, so we're able to promote summer throughout those direct fly markets that we have. We do that in a variety of ways, including our TV co-ops, cable, connected TV, digital, social, content marketing, out of home, which is billboard, and streaming radio. We also promote our local restaurants through our Summer Eats Pass, and that launches right after Restaurant Week at the end of May, beginning of June, to promote all of our local restaurants throughout the summer. We also have a summer social media campaign. This is last year's for 2023. We're in the process of finalizing our 2024 campaign. This one was really successful. It had almost 500,000 video views, 12,000 engagements, and it increased our followers by 2.3 thousand, and I'm going to share it with you now.
This life is a daydream. Our time is a precious thing. We're searching for meaning in the highs and the lows we've seen. When all is said and done, standing on the bright side, can't believe how far we've come. We've only just begun. See the world through new eyes, taking us to great heights. Anything is possible, everything is new, and we'll carry each other, running wild into the night, technicolor blue, and we'll carry each other.
So a lot to do in the summer in our destination. So that was really successful. We also prioritize event support. Here are a few examples of the programs and events that we've supported in Cathedral City. So you can see some examples here, as well as some digital and social media support. So we do that through content, social media, newsletters, and I have an example of a video that is from the Balloon Festival, which we were really excited this year to have the co-branded balloon launch for the first time. That was really fun to work with Ryan and the team on creating that, and I'm going to share the video here, but even since this, we've had that balloon at the Arizona Balloon Festival, which was really great to promote the destination, and we have one in Albuquerque coming up that we're going to be working with them on. And some additional digital support with blogs and event calendar, all of the events happening in the city promoted through different blog content, as well as roundups that we have for Restaurant Week and other events that we have as a destination. And then some other examples of Instagram as well. And for 2024, this is an example of all of the media partners that we're currently working with and running our campaign with. You can see the breadth and depth of the media partners that we have. So it's everything from TV, connected TV, OTAs, social media, radio, digital, print, and everything in between. So this is just a glimpse into how many programs that we're currently a part of. And these are some examples of our campaign that's currently running with some of the ad creative that we have. And we're really excited about what we're in development in right now for 2024 for the fall and winter. We are developing a new brand campaign in conjunction with an agency out of New York, Starfish, and they will be here in production at the end of this month. But Scott was mentioning about research. We took 3 concepts out to our consumer base and all of our drive and fly markets, and you can see here by this pie chart that one of the concepts definitely resonated the most. We asked questions like, what would make you be motivated to visit Greater Palm Springs, and what would impact your decision to do that? And so we had a clear winner, and so we're in the process of building out that campaign for the fall and winter of 2024. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions and turn it over to Davis to talk about vacation rentals.
Not a question, but just a comment that you guys do an amazing job marketing our Coachella Valley.
Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
I'm always surprised how beautiful all your commercials come out.
Thank you.
I find myself, when I see your commercials, thinking, I want to go there. Then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I live here. This is great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, I'll turn it over to Davis. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so we are working to support Cathedral City's about 124 or so permitted short-term rentals in tourism zones, as well as vacation rentals across the Coachella Valley with education, resources, as well as marketing support. We have a new local campaign, One Coachella Valley, short-term rentals, long-term benefits. This campaign has digital ads, social media, as well as a landing page that has resources about the regulations in each city, good neighbor hotlines, how to find information, as well as information about the economic impacts and the important role that short-term rentals play in our tourism economy. We are working with a national organization called Rent Responsibly on a series of webinars and hostings for short-term vacation rental operators to help them be better and more professional. The webinars include information about the specific regulations in each city and how to comply with them, as well as they have templates for communicating with guests, making sure they really understand the regulations and the expectations of them when they're visiting our cities. And there's a great resource landing page for our hosts with this collaboration as well. We, of course, base everything that we do in research and data. So in September of last year, we worked with J. Wall & Associates to conduct a voter poll of vacation rental sentiment in the Coachella Valley. We did see that 72% of voters felt favorably, either very or somewhat favorably about short-term rentals in their city, and that percentage increases even farther if the short-term rental tax revenues are tied back to the issues that they care most about, which listed here are homelessness, public safety, creating affordable housing, and the cost of living. And we also found with this survey that a lot of our residents just aren't aware that permits are required, that all of our cities have regulations, that they're enforcing those. So that's another big part of our campaign, is really sharing with our residents that our cities do have regulations around short-term rentals. And now for our legal and well-regulated short-term rentals, we are promoting them to visitors through our destination marketing, as well as on those channels that are really specifically targeting vacation rental visitors. We've had a lot of fun with these campaigns, and a great example of one of those was last summer with Vrbo. We did a really fun pool floaty persona campaign. I'm a flamingo here. You selected your pool floaty persona, and it served up things to do in Greater Palm Springs, as well as vacation rentals in each of our cities that are listed on the platform. It generated $17.5 million in bookings for the destination, and we'll be working with them again this summer on a campaign. And now switching to workforce development, we know we can't continue to grow our tourism economy and our economy here in general if we're not supporting our workforce and helping to develop our workforce here locally. So we have a number of partnerships and initiatives around workforce development. We work closely with all of our school districts, with College of the Desert, and with the Cal State Palm Desert campus, supporting their students and helping connect them to opportunities in the tourism industry. We have a partnership with One Future Coachella Valley on scholarships for students who are going into hospitality-related programs or culinary programs. That is through the Tourism Foundation. That's the nonprofit arm of Visit Greater Palm Springs, where we do a lot of the support for these workforce development programs. We also have a Young Hospitality Champions Network, helping young folks that are working in hospitality and tourism find each other and connect and find mentors, as well as just foster a sense of pride in their industry. This is just an example of some of the great partners that we have in our workforce development efforts. I want to highlight on this slide the partnership that we did last year with Caravanserai Project. We supported a cohort of 30 Spanish-speaking entrepreneurs in the tourism and hospitality space and provided our Team GPS ambassador training for them and did a marketplace helping to connect them to our tourism partners and just helping to grow their business here within the tourism and hospitality industry. We also have an initiative right now to become a certified autism destination through IBCCES. This is both a workforce development and a marketing promotion program. The IBCCES provides training for staff of businesses that sign up to become certified in autism sensitivity and awareness, and then helps to promote those businesses to families who are looking for businesses that are autism friendly. So we're getting very close to our certified autism destination status, and we'd love to work with more Cathedral City businesses on this. Cities can become certified too, so we're happy to talk to you more about that at any time. Another really successful partnership that we had this last year was with College of the Desert's PACE program on a certificate training for hospitality employees who were moving into their first supervisory roles. This is a 6-part certificate training program in leadership. It's the Emerging Leaders Certificate Training. So we provided scholarships, again, through the Tourism Foundation for folks who are working in hospitality to go through this program, and had about 98 participants so far go through and complete that training. And that's all for me. Unless you have any questions. Thank you.
So just want to say thank you for your time. I also want to just reiterate that I think the deck that we sent over had about 100 slides. We only showed you a piece of that, and we also had sent a link to your city dashboard. That's a new dashboard, so please take a look at that. It highlights not only the data from around the valley, but also specifically from your city as well. So if there's anything we can ever do for you, please don't hesitate. We love working with your team, and we appreciate the opportunity today.
Scott, thank you.
Thank you.
Council, is there any comments or questions?
I have a question, Scott. Now, do you have a percentage of the hotels that are smaller than 50 rooms?
I would have to go back and do analysis on how many small hotels fall under the 50, but we can do that, right? Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head.
And has there ever been a conversation about possibly lowering the amount or the range 50 plus to be levied a tax to maybe 25 or 30?
We tried to do that a few years ago, and there was a big pushback from the smaller hotels, so that's why we left it at 50. And part of the reason why we need the JPA and private funding is that the way the T-bid is structured is really the businesses that are being levied the assessment, which in this case is the hotels of 50 rooms or more and vacation rentals. So we need to have additional funding to support the kind of diversity of our fund to allow us to promote restaurants, attractions, and non-T-bid payers. So that's why it was so important to have your funding from the cities for the JPA to be able to promote restaurants and events and other things that aren't paying into the T-bid. So at the time, it was the decision of the board to keep it at the 50 and above.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? No? Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate everything
Thank you.
do for us.
Have a great day.
You too. Do we have any members of the public that wish to comment?
Mayor, I did not receive any requests to speak forms, but if you're a member of the public and you wish to comment on this item, please raise your hand. And I see none.
Okay, thank you. This is a presentation only for discussion and direction only. There is no formal action required. Next is going to be Sphere of Influence Fiscal Impact Analysis. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Yes, this is a follow-up to one of your goals from the strategic plan, which was to review the status of our sphere of influence area and what it would cost us to serve it versus what would come in revenue. So Andy Feinstein, our Development Services Director, is going to introduce that, and then Nicole Christ is here from Terra Nova, who did the analysis for you. The full report is in your packet, and Andy, I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the City Council. Andy Firestein, your Director of Development Services. And I'm sort of the cover page for this presentation, so I'll just provide some quick context of how we got here, and I'll get out of the way so that Nicole Christ can deliver the balance of the presentation. So it was about 2 years ago that Council requested that we update the 2018 fiscal impact analysis for the sphere of influence. That came through a Council goal-setting workshop. That 2018 fiscal impact analysis looked at the city's sphere of influence, approximated the annual costs needed to serve that sphere of influence at a city service level, together with estimates of the projected annual revenues within that area. The study also took a look at the one-time revenues and the significant one-time costs that would be needed to elevate the infrastructure and the areas of the unincorporated county in our sphere to city service levels. So that study was prepared in 2018, and that was brought back to Council in this study session in August of 2022. At that study session, the Council provided two key inputs for an update of that fiscal impact analysis. Primarily, the Council was looking for some data on the eastern edge of the sphere of influence, the North Star specific plan, and there was a desire to update the prior study to really look at what was going on in that area of the sphere. There also was a desire to look at the public safety costs and to look at not just a model with city-provided services, but a contract model. So that was incorporated into a request for proposal that was advertised in December of 2022, and in March of 2023, contract was awarded to Terra Nova Planning and Research to perform the study that is being presented to you tonight. So at the end of this presentation, there are some recommendations in terms of next steps. We have not performed outreach to the Thousand Palms community. That's one of those next steps. And then as well, there's also a bullet point or two on LAFCO. Any application to annex a portion or all of the sphere of influence would need to go through LAFCO, and that would be a next step. So I'll step out of the way at this point. I'll be available for any questions that Council may have along the way or at the tail end of the presentation. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Nicole Christ for a presentation of the findings from this study.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We were here a while back, and we went away and did a lot of math, and we're here to report on the math. And I hope I get this right. I'm not very good at this technology. So you had a sphere that was expanded starting in 2011. In 2015, you annexed the North City Extended Specific Plan, Mr. Messenger's project, that has partially built out at this point. In 2018, we prepared the original documentation, and that included a visit with the Thousand Palms Community Council at the end of the process. And we started in 2023 on this effort. The total acreage of the sphere based on the current Riverside County GIS data is 7,900 acres. And of those, 7,200 are in Area A, which is the area immediately abutting the city all the way to Cook Street. And Area B is about 700 acres, and that is the area from Cook Street easterly that encompasses mostly the North Star specific plan, but also some additional lands that are not in the specific plan, but east of Cook Street. We have an existing population in that area of 8,000 people, a potential build-out population of almost 60,000 people, and a build-out housing unit count of about 22,850. So in relative terms, the city's size is currently about 65,000 people. So the sphere at build-out would be the size in terms of population of the city currently. There was the Constraints and Opportunities report was updated. There's been relatively little change in that information. The CVWD is continuing to work on major flood control projects on the north side, and those are ongoing and do, until they're done, present some constraints to development, because as you're eminently aware there are significant flood control challenges over there. Mr. Corella updated the costs for roadway improvements, which are for either unpaved or substandard streets in the Sphere area, and that information is also included in that document. In terms of our methodology, all of the projections are in today's dollars. We have not attempted a cost of living increase over the life of the development build out of the Sphere, mostly because we don't know what that time period could be. The 4 scenarios that we developed as a base are immediately upon annexation, so assuming no new development. 10% of vacant land being developed is scenario 2. Half of the vacant land being developed is scenario 3, and build out is scenario 4. Yes, ma'am.
Do you want to stop and take questions along the way? As the
Yes,
mayor
that's
asks questions?
fine.
So when you got the build-out anticipation for roadway improvement, did that include sidewalks and street curbs and things like that, or is it just asphalt?
No.
Or whatever the current thing is?
That's build out of streets to city standards.
To city
So
standards.
curb,
Thank you.
gutter, sidewalk. So we divided the scenarios. You wound up with 12 different scenarios, so that's why I'm going through all of these. In addition to the 4 time periods, we have 2 areas. The Sphere from city limits to Cook, and that's area A. Cook to the eastern boundary, which is the eastern edge of North Star, which is area B, and then the combined entire Sphere calculated all together. We consulted at length with police and fire department staffs to develop fully burdened personnel costs and growth in personnel over the build out of the annexation area. Those costs are generally tied to population because the height of activity for those 2 services are tied to people rather than buildings. And as you requested, we also calculated the cost of contracting for fire services with the county. All of the calculations for police assume city police. We did not go that route with police. We got new information from the county assessor on property tax revenues and current property values. We used the city's current zoning because the city has pre-zoned the Sphere. And revenues were calculated including or without cannabis tax at the current rate. Not that you have reduced the rate, and so it's not calculated at the higher rate. We also calculated developer impact fees based on your new DIF ordinance because it has changed considerably. We assumed the cost of purchasing the Thousand Palms Fire Station if the city were to continue with the fire service as opposed to county fire, under which case there would be no purchase of the fire station.
May I ask you, I'm so sorry, is the fire station equal to what we would have in a fire station as you look at it today?
I'm not sure.
I mean, is it a nice fire station? Is it something that would be equal to some of the stations we have in the city? Or is it I don't want to say anything disparaging about it, but is it, older?
It's older.
Thank you. I know, I go downhill too. So.
And we also calculated the cost of equipment and vehicles for new police staff as they come on. The increases in staffing and equipment for police are tied to population growth. We are looking at a cost of $4.9 million at annexation and up to $13.5 million at build-out for police services. For city fire, the purchase of the fire station alone is at about $9.5 million, and that is a educated guess. That does not include the equipment. Altogether, that adds $2 million to the cost for a fire truck and all of the equipment that goes into a fire station. The annual cost for city fire at annexation is $2.7 million, and at build-out is about $9.5 million, assuming the contract rates that the desert cities are currently paying for fire services. Those costs would be $2.1 million at annexation and about $15.7 million at build-out.
You just said that it was 2.7 at annexation and up to 9.5 at build-out, but it says on the form 19.5.
I'm sorry, I
It is
did not
19.
enunciate clearly.
And I just wanted to make a comment too. So, when at the point of annexation, the cost to the Cathedral City is $2.7 million, but build out is going to be a relatively extended time. On page 211 of our packet, it said the U.S. Census reported a 2010 population of 7,715 residents in Thousand Palms, and 10 years later, a 2020 population of 7,900. So that was a approximately 200 person increase in 10 years. So I just kind of trying to get my head around what the immediate costs are versus at build out, because it says as population grows is kind of a loose term.
Well, population is tied to new housing units.
Okay,
so the new housing units are calculated for each phase.
Got it. Okay.
For the 8,000 people that are there now, that's what the upon annexation numbers are calculated on. And the build-out period, you are correct, Thousand Palms has grown very slowly.
Right.
And so estimating it is impossible for us to do this analysis on over a 20-year schedule, for example, or over a 30-year schedule, because there has been such slow growth that would extend out a long time.
Right.
And there are several factors that can change that. The flood control improvements probably being the most significant.
Right. And thank you for educating me on that. I just was what triggered the as population grows, and it's the housing. Thank you.
Yes, the assumption is that, and LAFCO will make that assumption, that when you annex, you take over the services. And so since it is an inhabited annexation area, if it were to all be annexed at once, there are 8,000 people there. And so that's how we calculated police and fire costs. Now I'm going to go through the summary of findings for each of the 12 scenarios quickly. These are the total numbers. If any of you have questions about specific costs or revenues, we can touch on those and get into those numbers when we're done, but summaries and totals seem to be the best way to present this. As I said, there are 12 of them, so we will go through them quickly. For Area A, if we have city fire and cannabis tax revenues, which is calculated at about 10 million at build-out, the revenues altogether would be 47.4 million at build-out, and the cost would be 51 million at build-out. Under this alternative, it is fiscally negative and throughout the build-out of the annexation area. And that's for annexation area A. For annexation area with city fire and no cannabis tax, the revenues would drop to 37.6 million at build-out, and the costs are 51 million at build-out, and so that alternative is fiscally negative throughout its development. Under the county fire scenario, and county fire under contract works out a little bit less expensive than city fire, With cannabis tax, the revenues would be $43.2 million at build-out, and the cost would be $46.9 million at build-out. And so that alternative is fiscally negative throughout its lifetime. If we remove cannabis tax, the revenues drop to $33.4 million at build-out. The costs are $46.9 million at build-out, and so that alternative is also negative throughout its lifetime. For Area B, for city fire and including cannabis tax, because there is industrial development in the North Star specific plan, and so we assumed cannabis tax there. The revenues would be $7.3 million at build-out, and the cost would be $4 million at build-out, with the exception of the 10% building scenario when there are additional housing units, but not a lot of commercial development, because there is to generate sales tax and TOT, which is where the revenues primarily come from. The alternative is positive until that dip point at 10%. For Area B, with city fire and no cannabis tax, the alternative remains positive, but revenues drop to $6.7 million, costs are at $3.4 million, and again, except for a small dip at the 10% build-out scenario, the alternative is fiscally positive. For county fire with cannabis tax for Area B only, the revenues are $7.1 million at build-out, the costs are $3.1 million, and that alternative, with the exception of the 10% build-out scenario, remains positive throughout its lifetime. You can see a trend here. For Area B with county fire and no cannabis tax, the revenues drop to $6.4 million at build-out, the costs are $3.1 million, and the same scenario occurs. The 10% scenario is negative for a period, but the balance of the alternative is positive. Then when we combine the two and assume the entire sphere were to be annexed, with city fire and cannabis tax revenues, the total revenues would be $54.7 million at build-out, and the costs would be roughly the same. So it is slightly positive at build-out. And given the potential changes that can occur over time, that's a break-even alternative at build-out. $300,000 is not enough to significantly affect revenues up or down. With city fire and no cannabis tax, the alternative goes negative at build-out, primarily associated with the loss of those cannabis revenues, because the cannabis tax is about $10 million. And so otherwise the alternative, as you can see at build-out, would be flat. Under county fire with cannabis tax, the revenues are $5.2 million and the costs are $50.2 million, and the costs are $50 million. And that alternative is flat at build-out. And I should point out that the earlier development scenarios are showing negative because of the lack of development and the lack of revenues that are associated with that development. And under county fire with no cannabis tax, the entire sphere would have revenues of $39.9 million at build-out and costs of $50 million, again, the cannabis tax being about $10 million at build-out. That makes the difference between positivity and negativity. We also calculated one-time costs. So police equipment is expected to be about $670,000 immediately upon annexation, and 2.3 million over the build-out life and that's for cars, equipment, those kinds of things that are one-time as the personnel is added. The fire station and the equipment together are 11.5 million. That would need to occur if the city fire scenario occurs. That would need to occur upon annexation. If the county fire alternative is selected, then that expense does not occur. And over time, road construction would need to occur, and that would likely be rolled into your capital improvement plan, and would run 53.3 million according to our current estimations. The developer impact fees and art and public places fees are one-time fees that happen with development, and so based on the development potential in the sphere, altogether that would be a very large number. The DIF fees would total about 920 million, and the study breaks down by category what those are for. That ranges for fire facilities, police. You have a number of DIF fees that you charge. And art in public places would also yield a good number, 39.2 million, over the life of the build-out of the annexation. So this slide is a comparison of all of the scenarios. The area A first, area B in the middle, and the combined at the bottom, all with the various fire scenarios involved. So as I said, build out of the sphere will result in a city that is about the same size as you are now. Area A is fiscally negative throughout its life, with or without cannabis tax. Area B by itself, because of the higher revenues and the lower population that's generated, there are relatively few housing units in Area B, is fiscally positive throughout its development except for that 10% scenario. And unfortunately, the revenues generated by Area B do not make up for the negative cash flow for Area A and B combined. They are not high enough. As Andy indicated, we have not undertaken any community engagement as of now. The last step when we prepared the study in 2018 was to go talk to the Thousand Palms Community Council and talk to them about what the findings were. I take that back. We did that meeting before we had the results of the study, to tell them that the city was looking into this. That has not occurred with this effort at this point. And we will need to go through the LAFCO process, which includes disadvantaged unincorporated community requirements. There are 6 in the sphere, and so any annexation will need to consider incorporating those. We cannot work around them. There's actually state law that was changed a few years back that requires that if we are going by one, we have to incorporate it into our annexation effort. And that's true on both Ramon and on Varner in terms of the main streets that are in the sphere that might be a route for a portion of the sphere to be annexed. So that is the conclusion of my presentation. I know that was dense, but I'm glad to answer any questions, and if you'd like to get into specific cost or revenue categories, I'm happy to do that with you as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that thorough presentation. Looked like a lot of work went into it, and doesn't look too promising in the near future. But Council, I don't see anybody in queue here. Okay, there's Councilman Gutierrez.
Yes. Well, thank you for that extensive report. That's exactly what we wanted to hear 2 years ago, and you provided all the information necessary for us to make a decision as to what our next move would be. So thank you for that report. My question is, do you know how many units are currently in that location in the annexation area? Possible?
Yes, but I have to look it up.
Okay.
So on your agenda page number 16 and 17 is are the build-out projections. And we're showing 3,611 existing units in the annexation area under current conditions.
Well, thank you so much. Like I said, this report is lengthy and went through it, but there was so much information that I still have to go through in the future. But your information was very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gregory.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. So in the section B that you looked at, that actually has some revenue, what was that revenue mostly from in your study?
Mostly TOT property tax, TOT property tax and some sales tax, not quite as high as what the city generates. There is, on a proportional basis, there is relatively little commercially designated land in the sphere, especially if you compare it to a typical city ratio of commercial to residential. And so the sales tax generation is not as high in the sphere as it might be in a municipal jurisdiction.
So does it not have this great big arena in it? Or is that not inside?
Arena? Mm-hmm. I don't believe, the county arena is not allocated by, I believe they have a Coachella Valley arena, but I don't think.
Arena, the Acrisure Arena,
Oh, I'm sorry.
is that not in Area B?
It is an Area B.
Okay.
It does generate some sales tax, but there is no sales tax on ticket sales, and there's no ticket tax on ticket sales, and so the concessions would be the only ones that are generating sales tax.
Well, if you've ever been there, they generate a sizable amount, no doubt. Did you actually get data from sales tax from there, or is it too early for that?
It was both too early, and it's a single source, and so the state will not share it.
Okay. When you calculated sales tax projections throughout, did you also include our use tax?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this may not be a question for you, but you have done a lot of jurisdictions. Have you seen such a thing as a ticket tax?
We've never done a study where there was a large arena like this.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm just throwing this out because I think that on the surface, the numbers, of course, look daunting. And this is where we need to start, of course, to have these numbers. So it may not be part of your study. So this may not be a question for you unless you have something to add to it. But, one possibility as we analyze this and we realize that if we were to do an annexation, especially anything that included Section B, you pretty much, well, on this study, if there's only two sections, you pretty much have to annex Section A. As you discussed, there may be ways to split that up, although there are limitations there, and I'm glad you brought that out, that there are certain communities you wouldn't leave out. And frankly, I've never been a fan of big, long strip annexations, those types of things, anyways. Just to go down and try to get another piece. Sometimes if there's a friendly developer, there's reasons for that. But so I'm just throwing out that your analysis is based on what you had, and as you say, you don't necessarily have a lot of recent data. And it isn't including anything like possible taxes that could be in the future. Say this was annexed, and then a proposal was put out to add a tax, like a ticket tax on event spaces that had more than 2,000 seats. So much per ticket. So that would be something then that is not included in this analysis, but we could use this analysis to see maybe how much of the deficit it would make up.
Yes, and the only data we use is existing verifiable data. So we did not engage in any speculation about other potential sources of revenue. So there are, community facilities districts for infrastructure. There are a variety of financing methods that can be added and can be considered for future considerations. But those are speculative and they are policy based. They're obviously your responsibility to decide on, and so we did not include any of those.
Yeah. All right. And I say that just for food for thought for staff and council, that although one may look at this simply and say, oh, well, the numbers didn't balance out, it could also be the basis from when you start to say, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? What would it have to say? I'm surprised to hear, just frankly, that they won't give you a sales tax projection somewhere, because we can usually figure out or have data as to like what an auto dealer here generates each one for sales tax. And frankly, I'm part of the Riverside County Transportation Commission also, and they monthly they'll generate a sales tax report, and they actually list who are the highest single generators in the county. So I'm surprised that they won't give you Acrissure's sales tax projections. I bet somebody out there has them. So, all right, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, very welcome.
Although I will say on that, Councilman Gregory, even though for our analysis we do get some data, but we're not allowed to release or publicly disclose information that would tie back to one particular business as well. We can talk about it internally, but we're not allowed to go public with any of that either.
Mayor Pro Tem Ross.
Thank you so much. I don't know, maybe I'm Pollyanna. I thought it was kind of promising. Promising in that I look at Thousand Palms and I think about, if somebody knocked on my door and said, I'm going to marry your daughter, I probably wouldn't be real thrilled with that idea either, right? Let's get to know each other a little bit, right? It might work out, it might not, but let's have some opportunities. And I think that I have enough confidence in the numbers that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, because I see future potential there, and I don't think that's, based on what you have provided, I no longer think that that's a Pollyanna view, that there is an opportunity, a potential opportunity to help with some kind of a sphere of influence that would benefit the people there. But I'm more personally concerned with how that looks to the people there. We're coming to knock on their door to take their daughter away. And I don't want them to feel that way. And I sort of tongue-in-cheek, but not totally, said to Charlie before I ever started, talking to the people there, I think we'd have a couple hot dog feeds, We'd have some positive interaction with them. How does a city open that door in a positive way? I mean, my understanding is the folks in Thousand Palms are not 100%, willing to just come for no reason that they can see. And I'm sure you've dealt with other reluctant places. I mean, we can say to them, and will say to them if we decide to go forward, that our intentions are good and that we want to help, and this isn't to our benefit, this is for our equality, and we have all the words and we have those genuine feelings. How does a city begin to express those in a way that you're not just considered a hooligan?
Well, public outreach is one of the most complex aspects, a comprehensive pre-annexation public outreach, as opposed to going to meet with the community council, which is what the last step in our scope that's included. It's one of the most complex things that is done under the, I mean, the LAFCO process is relatively straightforward. You fill out applications, you give them documents, they go to hearing. The problem with outreach, and we have worked on annexations that have failed because of the registered voter vote at the end. And I don't know if you're all familiar with how the process works, but unfortunately, landowners and residents do not have the final say. Registered voters do. And those are not always landowners. In many areas, on the contrary, they're renters who have a completely different perspective on life and on the community that they live in. Our most successful public outreach has been with smaller groups and identifying stakeholders who can help. And that is pastors and supportive community council members who are schools. There's a list, right? Who are willing to host smaller events. One has to, you have a formal role, and then there's also the human role, and we have to go through the formal role, presenting to the community council because they are your equivalent in Thousand Palms, and making that initial extension to present this to them as a possibility, and then breaking it down to a much more human scale. I call them coffee clatches.
So the hot dog's not out. The hot dog idea is not out, right? So the hot dog, those kinds of things is what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Really personal donuts on Saturdays.
And where you can talk to people and address their concerns individually. I will also tell you that as a rule, those people who start off opposed finish opposed. In some respects, there's a reason they live in the county, and they prefer it that way, and they don't want to see a municipal jurisdiction. And understanding who your registered voters are, we can get registered voters lists from the county. We've done it for other jurisdictions. And targeting those registered voters and understanding how many of them are landowners versus renters, that makes a huge difference. We've tried twice in one jurisdiction to annex a particular area. And in both cases, the majority of voters, and there were only 57 of them, but the majority of registered voters were renters, and there were absentee land or property owners. And those 57, because it's 50% of those who vote. And as you know, people against are more likely to come speak to you, more likely to be active than people in favor. So that's the other part of this, building the support and having those people participate in the process, because the LAFCO protest vote is a mail-in vote. It's LAFCO sends out the ballots, and it's the people who respond. So if 100 people respond and they're all opposed, which is what generally happens, then the annexation fails.
And you hit something that I'm always embarrassed to say this in front of a psychology major in college. My gosh, I look back and I think, didn't I have parents to tell me better? Anyway, what we did learn, I do remember a whole series of classes I took that were based on that very fact, that it's so hard to change a mind. It's much easier to win a mind than to change a mind. And those are the things I think that interest me most about this. Money, we trust you, will work its way out one way or the other, but swaying somebody, that's the hard part. So I'm not dissuaded, but actually instead kind of encouraged that we have a chance to change people's lives.
So I wanted to just add a couple of quick thoughts here, and I agree with everything that Nicole has shared with you. And my experience with annexations, that a study like this, it's really looking at what an annexation can do for us. There's another side to this, and this is what can incorporation do for the Thousand Palms community and the residents in that community. And I do think that is part of this message. It's what can this do to elevate the lives, the quality of life, elevated police service, fire service, code compliance, animal control, the basic services that residents need each and every day. And yes, there are many residents that live in the county because they want to be in the county, but there are others that really could stand to benefit from an enhanced level of service. And I think that's part of that messaging, part of that outreach, and really trying to understand what this could mean for those residents. There's also a lot of myths and misconceptions with annexation. That's something that I've experienced in my history, and part of that outreach, part of that engagement is really trying to lay the facts out. This is how this will impact you, and just trying to share a complete story as you're engaging with that community. So leave that with council just as something to think about what that outreach looks like.
Good. Oh, thank you. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem, you brought up a good point. How do you change their minds? He said it's hard to change people's minds. I don't think it's hard to change their mind if you walk in with a plan, if you walk in there with something. I mean, we're not offering them anything more than what they have right now. We're just saying, we're going to change your name to Cathedral City. So if we were flush and Cathedral City had plenty of hundreds of $millions, we could say, hey, we're going to come in and we're going to build this center, we're going to do this here, we're going to plan out your roads, we're going to make your life better. We're not offering them anything there. What we're seeing is the cold facts that it's a losing proposition to move forward right now. I think they can change and say, yeah, we'll go to Cathedral City when we're prepared to offer them something that's going to better their lives, like Andy touched on. So with that being said...
Well, I agree with you around the discussion, but that's not really what we had. What we were presented with today is the fiscal analysis, which is important. But I think if this hasn't scared you or isn't daunting, it still, to me, is just a step. It doesn't mean we have to do anything right now, but it could also mean, that's why I think we should give it some thought, that we could say, okay, this is where we're at, and that's why I was trying to say one of the things to counter this would be, well, if we wanted to try to bring them or join their family, just join together with them, one of the steps is to determine, well, what would that mean for them as far as a better life for them, a better opportunity to develop their community. It's not growing very quickly, but we have good staff, we have methods that are coming online that are, have been aligned, that we could help change that. So I think that's part of it. And I think what you're saying is correct. If we go through that part of it and there isn't really anything that we have to offer them, then that's very telling right there. But I don't think we've done that yet. I don't think we just assume, oh, well, they're going to get what they already have. I don't think that's been determined yet. So, and then the other part of it, I said for the analysis is I would think we would look at, well, are there other funding opportunities? And we have that arena that's right there. So that's an obvious one. There may be other ones that are out there that we haven't looked at there that are potential for development beyond what is in the analysis or with a little bit of vision going back and saying, well, if this piece of property were to be done this way, how would that change the numbers and what's the potential? So some of that might involve some economic development expertise, those types of things. I think one thing, though, that I heard today that I think is very interesting, and it's not new, but I think you did a good job of bringing it out, is flood control. So a lot of that is going to be very problematic to develop, but if we could work with the flood control district, which is CBWD here, in that area at least, and get a project done that helps with flood control, well, that might change this whole analysis.
And CVWD has been working on those projects. There's one that is on your west end at the Verano Channel is one that they're working on actively, and then there is also one on north of Thousand Palms proper, where the residents get the most impact on that side, that they've been working on for years. It's unfortunately both a federal and a state project, and so it moves at glacial rates.
Great. And that may be an opportunity where we could be advocating in a more strong way than we're not doing, and that could benefit that community, and then, of course, benefit the areas that we already have in the city, and potentially areas that then could be added to the city. So I found this very interesting, but again, like my colleague here, I think from the first study in 2018, it was like, well, yeah, that's way too much money. We don't have a lot of money like that sitting around, and that's it. To me, this is not really that simple. That's why it's important to do this from time to time, I think, and to maybe put a little vision in there and look for some of those milestones, or even help promote some of those milestones like the flood control, because that would change this whole picture here. So.
Or like the influence our supervisor has to
And that.
Councilman Gutierrez?
Yes, my question is, now, does a property owner that owns a single-family home have the same voting rights as someone that owns a 10-acre parcel with a house?
It's vote for vote. So if that property owner isn't registered to vote, he has no say. If that property owner, so someone who owns 300 acres but does not live in the sphere ultimately is not likely to vote in the protest hearing. The protest hearing process is arcane, and it involves property owners and voters at the beginning, but with as many registered voters as there are in this area, it will land with registered voters because of the higher percentage of registered voters that we have here.
Now, the amount that you listed, 7,000 and something residents, is that residents or registered voters?
No, that's total residents.
Total residents. And you don't happen to know the amount of
Usually,
registered voters?
most communities, it's about between 30 and 50% of a community is registered to vote.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Charlie?
Fortunately, this is a very, I'm sorry, go ahead. Let Councilmember Lamb go first, and then
That's all right. I didn't click it. Anyway, thank you so much for this detailed presentation, because this is exactly what I was, I think we were all counting on this and very delighted with your results. And Councilman Gregory talked about the flooding areas, and on packet page 229, it said, hydraulic models generated for the North Cathedral City and Thousand Palms area by Northwest Hydraulic Consultants. It was in 2013. So I looked through this and I saw there were many dates of results of studies about natural occurrences, whether they be flood or earthquake, that were old. I mean, and since Tropical Storm Hilary, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the impact in our just in our community has been substantial. So, as we talk about this and think about this going forward, to have whether it's CVWD or this company or all the companies that were cited in the footnotes, to have updated analysis of this property so that I would have a better understanding of where we are and if we want to go forward. So anyway, that was all explanation, but thank you for this, for consolidating all of this, because it gave me lists and things and dates and all sorts of municipalities and state and county projects to refer back to. So thank you. Thank you, Charlie. And then Charlie.
The work that the citations from the private companies, from the engineering companies, are all for work that's been done for CVWD. They're not not independent studies.
I see. Okay. Good to know.
Generally.
Charlie?
Thank you. Fortunately, This is a very complicated topic. And fortunately, you don't have to decide anything today or even this year. So it's a topic that we can continue to watch. What happens from the development front, that will make a difference. What happens from the flood control front, that will make a difference. We can continue to have discussions from time to time, particularly as we get new information and update the models. So I would say this is something that you need to keep on your radar screen. You don't have to decide up or down right now. You watch and you wait, and maybe we do some things such as Councilmember Ross is suggesting, just to help get better acquainted with people, not as part of an annexation process, just as sort of a prelude to something that may happen when the conditions warrant. I think Councilmember Gregory's points that this provides good data for you as decision makers and staff to do analysis on what other alternatives exist that might influence the outcome. I think that's important. I think it also gives you important information should property owners or other jurisdictions come to us wanting to change the SOI boundaries or something, because it gives us information that we'll be able to be informed when we go into those discussions, and I think that's important as well.
So is there some advocacy that you could see that we could do? I mean, it might seem that we're going to have to tell CWD that some of these projects are important to us because they should know. But, it never hurts to have some type of a follow-up, or even if it's just a letter or something.
I have sent, CVWD has, not only have they funded the North Cathedral City project in their CIP, but they're also going after, they used to be called earmarks, there's a different name for it now, from Congressman Ruiz and from both of the senators, and I've written letters of support for those.
Well, that was my other part, because if when in those conversations they can share with us details about what types of funding they're going after, then maybe there's things that we as the city or even elected officials can do to remember to put something in the ears of people. Or as we have a grants person now, that grants person, even though we might say, well, technically that's outside of the city, but that they could be, their work could be expanded to say, hey, that's our sphere of influence, and so those are our neighbors, and although we may not have legal responsibility over them, we have, one might argue, an ethical responsibility over trying to advocate for their welfare also.
And we even have responsibility from some roads, as we learned during Tropical Storm Hillary, that are subject to this flooding. So we do have an interest in that, even aside from everything else. I know John and the engineering staff are engaged with CVWD and Riverside County Flood Control District on a regular basis. I think that's really important to continue that so that we are aware of what they're doing and what they're going after, and we can offer support. And I have conversations with other city managers, particularly Palm Desert, being adjacent to the arena development, because I think it's important to stay up to date on that too, and so that things aren't, what is it that Carolyn Coleman at the League says, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, so that we're at the table on discussions like that. So I think it is important for us to continue to be engaged in all of those arenas.
And it's just like not long ago, we had a presentation by LAFCO and kind of walked us through it, not this particular, but just how LAFCO works and what it does. And we all have either slight or intense communications with people. We all know, who to say what's going on or drop a line, or maybe we'd like a presentation from CVWD or something like that to just continue that wheel a-going. It doesn't have to go at monumental speeds. It just has to keep going, because if we quit showing interest, well, then we'll just lose this.
So Charlie, as far as direction, where do we go from here? Where does council want to go? Do we want to continue this for a year, or does Councilmember Gregory want any more information that he feels necessary, or what do you want to do from here?
What I gathered from this discussion is that we should plan on coming back periodically. I don't know whether that's once a quarter or twice a year, but on somewhat regular basis, provide information on new information that we've learned, updates on what CVWD and others are doing, to just keep engaged on this topic. And then anytime we learn new information to make sure that that is packaged up so that we can have a discussion about it. That would be my...
Yeah, I agree that you do have to set certain times you come back, but I would also say, or there's a significant change. And the other thing I just want to I was trying to put across is I don't want to take a stance that we're just watching. I want to take a stance that we are also advocating for that region, whether it ends up in the city or not. And the water, as we learned, the better you have flood control, whether it ends up in the city or not, it eventually helps our city because it stops it up there, and then you have less chance of it coming here. So in addition to watching, I'd also like to see if staff, or even if they become aware, opportunities for us to advocate to move these forward. I mean, like we say, if it meant that CVWD is looking at 5 projects and we need to go, or we need to write a letter and we need to say, we would like you to give these ones priority, and here's why, and here's who it would affect, whether they're in the city or not. But it's in our area that, like I said, I think we have some ethical, as it's in our sphere, if we're going to hold it as our sphere, we have some ethical responsibility to advocate for things that are good for that area, which ends up being good for us.
And just right off the get-go, I'd like to know how many registered voters there are. And that's just a simple little question. We can find that out.
Yeah, we can easily find that out.
That's right. But it's a start. It's a something. Now we know. Now we know something. And when, I know that there could be some knocking at the door kind of scenario that we're going to come take their daughter. But the truth is, we aren't gaining a great deal from this. We're doing this. I'm doing this, and I believe that my fellow council members are, because it's a good thing to do, because it's the right thing to do. And if we can keep that in our minds at all times, that, we're not doing this to benefit us. We're doing this to benefit others, as we all should be doing in our lives every day.
Okay.
And we do have one thing with CVWD that's to our advantage too. Our former mayor and council member John Aguilar is on the board and is very interested in engaging with us on topics of mutual concern. So we'll stay in contact with him as well.
Okay, good. City Clerk, is there any comments from the public?
Mayor, I did not receive any requests to speak forms, but if you're a member of the public and would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. And ma'am, would you please join us at the podium? State your name and record for the...
I didn't mean to interrupt.
My name is Patricia Soleil Swaim, and I serve on the Thousand Palms Community Council. So I came because I'm very interested to hear how you're thinking about this, and I have been part of the sphere of influence scenario since about 2008. So I have experienced the reactions of the public over there, and the people who show up are all on the negative side, I can tell you right now. Number one, we had people in the audience who were so rude, I can't believe it. They would get up and say, we don't trust government. They don't trust people. These are the people who show up, and I don't think everybody in Thousand Palms feels that way. But I think what Councilmember Gregory said was so important. They need to know what Cathedral City can do for them. They're all afraid. They're afraid of, and very misinformed about so many things. So many seniors who live there are afraid that their taxes are going to go up. They forgot about Proposition 13. They don't believe people. So I think having a plan, like what you were talking about, is a good thing. A plan to say, this is what we would like to see here in Thousand Palms. Now, the first thing they're going to think is, we don't want to pay higher taxes. Okay, so because a lot of those people are on fixed incomes, and they're barely making it. A lot of people are just barely making it. I want to say about the census, so many people do not answer the census. And we have many people who don't want the government to know they live there. And so I'm afraid there's probably more people there than what you have a record of. I do know from our reports from the Berger Foundation that they have some projects in mind, multi-use projects, that could very easily increase their contribution to the the tax income from that area. But I also know that you probably need to annex both A and B areas because I don't think LAFCO will allow any islands to be formed. So it's management, of the whole thing, as you guys well know. At any rate, I just wanted to say that having small groups, we did all of these things when this first came up about the sphere of influence. We had meetings. We went to Tri-Palms, to the HOA of Ivy Ranch, where I live. And they were all told that Palm Desert was going to annex Thousand Palms and Ivy Ranch when they bought into Ivy Ranch, which wasn't true. And it still isn't true as far as I can see. They don't want to spend the money to bring Thousand Palms up to the standards of Palm Desert. And not only that, but the people don't realize that how much more it would cost them in reality. So I believe, I'm happy to help. If you want to let me know, Mr. McClendon has my information. The flood zone, I wanted to tell you about this. Ivy Ranch was affected a lot by the flood. And so I've been talking to the county flood control department and CVWD. I've been serving on the council since 2008 and also on the Chamber of Commerce. I was at one time the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And so we wanted to improve the website for Thousand Palms to include all the different kinds of people that live there. We have some very wealthy people who live there, and they live up in the Desert Moon area. So in an attempt to improve the website, I contacted some of the people and asked them if I could come up and take pictures. So they said yes. I got up there to Desert Moon, and one lady who lived right at the top told me, and this was about in 2005 that I was trying to do this. She said, I just want you to notice something. She said, we had to divert water off of our land in order to be able to build up here. And I said, really? She says, I don't know how that's going to affect everybody else, but we had to do that. So I have brought this up to CVWD. I'm waiting for them to give me a map of any water that's been diverted. In 2005, we had a flood. It was not a major one like Hillary, but I purchased my home in 1995. And nobody said anything about us being in a flood zone. We never had any flooding, nothing. So when I was on the phone with Riverside County, they said, well, you didn't have a flood zone then. We never determined you were in a flood zone until 2005. So, 2005, I'm thinking back, what changed? We didn't have, horrible floods where the water would come down from Desert Moon, cross Ramon, go through Tri-Palms, come through the next desert in between Tri-Palms and Ivy Ranch, and right into our front gate. So I'm waiting, and I think I'd love to have your help with any of this. You were talking about how you could possibly help us get some of this information from CVWD. I would love to know about the map of any. You're not allowed to divert your water onto somebody else's land. That is not allowed by law. So I think that might end up being of help. I certainly am no water engineer, but I can only say that was told to me, and I've been trying to investigate it. And I think, Mr. McClendon, can probably help. And I do think that your involvement, you see, I'm pro-annexation because I know that people...
Well, I wouldn't let you go 3 minutes over if you weren't pro, so keep talking.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize we were... I see.
You're fine. You got till 5:30.
I do.
And I think you could probably get there.
Well, I just believe that the people are not unhappy with our fire department, by the way. They love our firemen. They come out and they're there in 3 minutes to take care of people who are having a heart attack, you name it. They are wonderful people. But at sheriffs, we have too few sheriffs, too few highway patrol. They have a huge area to cover. That would be a great asset to Thousand Palms, if people could understand this, that we would have an expanded police department. And you have a lot of people working in their homes. They're afraid they're not going to be allowed to work out of their homes anymore. And we told them at the beginning of the Sphere battle that Cathedral City was promising they would not change that. They're not looking to take people's income away. But again, we're talking about people who do not trust people. So they want a contract. They want something stating this will not happen. And then maybe they could enjoy the benefits of what Cathedral City could bring to them. They're looking for a senior center, and they would really be a perfect place for a senior center because there's so many people over 55 that live there. There's no emergency preparedness. Why is there none? Because people can't afford to save up food when they can barely afford food right now. A lot of people cannot think of. Our church plans ahead for emergency preparedness. Our house was full of food when the flooding happened. But there were people in Ivy Ranch who didn't have any. Guess who came out? Salvation Army. I was so fascinated by it. They came out and brought boxes of food in big trucks with huge wheels. And I called all the people whose people were not able to get out of their homes. So the county is spending thousands and thousands of dollars. They do have money, infrastructure money. If you guys could help us. CBWD said it's going to take 10 years. They have no money to do this flood control project. So if you had something to add to that, some proposal where they could have some financing, help with financing. It would help everybody. I mean, I'm now paying several $1,000s a year for flood insurance, and thank goodness I have it. A lot of people didn't have it. We had about $100,000 worth of approved damages to underneath of our house, not the furniture. We didn't even know anything bad was happening in there. My husband and I said we would stay up all night, just to make sure. And then all of a sudden, firemen knocked at the door. This is your chance to evacuate. Well, I've lived in the Coachella Valley since 1946. We have never had anything like this happen, where we had an opportunity to evacuate in a small rubber boat. And I said, the rain's almost stopped. She said, I think you'll be okay if you stay here.
It seems like you are a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure you know the rules that 3 of us can't meet with you. But why don't 1 or 2 of us have coffee with you?
I'd love
and
to.
And be able to get down into the nitty-gritty.
Anytime. I will be happy to help.
We've got your information. Happy to make that happen.
Yes, in fact, when it was flooding, I think I called your office, but you were probably busy elsewhere. Because I said, if you guys could get on top of this, they didn't have enough, machines to get the water out.
Yeah.
I think that the fire station should, if we're going to keep having them for 10 years, I definitely think the fire station should have some pumps.
Well, we're excited to hear your ideas because you know so much about Thousand Palms that we don't.
Yeah, Patricia, thank you for sharing so much with us, especially the public safety and fire
Yes.
issues that you have there. So that would be really a good way to start, and with the flooding.
Absolutely.
Because I know public safety here in Cathedral City is very important to our residents and our community.
And I
our
think
chief
that's
of
good to
police
show
has done
people.
a great job here. So, okay.
I'll
Anybody
give
else
you-
want to ask Patricia a question or anything? No. I know, but what are we going to do? Okay, Patricia, thank you so
My
much. I got to
pleasure.
cut you off now. I'm sorry. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
I appreciate you guys
We'll
very
have
much.
coffee.
Yeah. City Clerk, is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Mayor, I do not have any other requests to speak. If you're a member of the public and you wish to comment on this item, please raise your hand. And I see none.
Okay, thank you. This is a presentation only for discussion and direction only. There is no formal action required. Meeting adjourned.